Tom's wife probably won't be able to have kids. That's why you shouldn't marry an older woman. That's what my boss Smith told me at the company where I restarted my career at 40. I was shaking with anger and demanded he retract his statement, but he didn't even realize his mistake. Worse yet, at the company's founding anniversary party, he and his wife insulted me and my wife. Oh, is this Tom's mother? I thought she was his mom, not his wife. As a small crowd gathered and quieted down, the CEO came running over with a pale face. I never expected to meet here. I'm Tom, and 40-year-old. I work as a medical equipment service engineer. The company is a major player in the industry. I joined the company last year as a mid-career hire, so this is my first year. I've decided to work here for a long time, so I'm striving hard every day. In general, people tend to be accepted regardless of their age or number of job changes. However, when it comes to the department head named Smith, it was different. He gave me skeptical looks. Even with engineering experience, moving jobs at your age, did you make a big mistake at your last job, or are you planning to leave here soon too? I guess he had his reasons for thinking the way he did when I joined the company at 40. I had been an engineer at other companies until my late 20s, but after that, I spent time abroad until I turned 39 last year. Initially, I went on a working holiday to Germany, where my sister lived after getting married. Then, for about 10 years, I lived in various places like Africa and the Middle East, working with Doctors Without Borders. My role in Doctors Without Borders was that of a logistician. A logistician is responsible for procuring and managing supplies and equipment needed for aid. This also involved ensuring transport and travel routes for patients. I was a non-medical staff member working alongside doctors. When I first went to Germany, it was just a one-year working holiday, a light-hearted desire to see a bit of the world while young. Having worked as an engineer in America for over 5 years, I couldn't picture spending my entire life at the same company. And that first experience abroad was more shocking than I expected. It was a stark contrast to the flexible America, where everything required my own responsibility. People are very straightforward and punctual, which motivated me to be hardworking. Although German people are generally introverted, that didn't make me feel isolated so bad. I ended up loving the different surroundings from American culture. Using all my abilities to live each day was fun for me. I regretted not experiencing living abroad earlier, like my sister. She moved to Germany for college, got a job, and married there. She said to me, "Tom, you're just like me, more alive living abroad than taking it easy in America. Why don't you come back after your working holiday is over?" I deeply felt the same way. So, after safely spending a year and returning to America once, I was preparing to go back to Germany while working part-time. It was then I came across some job information that decided my future. I saw a recruitment ad for Doctors Without Borders staff. It's a job that involves traveling to places around the world where medical care is inaccessible, living there while helping people. It's a job dedicated to providing labor for people suffering from conflicts, natural disasters, and poverty. As I researched, I found they were recruiting electricians, architects, and also medical equipment service engineers. For each of these professions, practical experience was essential. Having experience as an engineer, I filled out the application and applied right away. In the interview, they asked in detail about my motivation. I want to support healthcare with what I can do. I want to use my English skills, physical strength, and mental fortitude, everything, for the sake of others. I spoke passionately and was accepted. After that, I was registered as a dispatch staff and participated in domestic training. There was more than half a year until the overseas training, so I kept working part-time during that period. My first dispatch was to the Middle East and Africa. In the town where I was sent, there was a shortage of vaccines for infectious diseases, and many people were becoming severely ill from diseases that could be easily treated in America. The medical team's mission was to vaccinate all the children in the town center. I was in charge of managing the vaccine transporters and drivers. Just transporting the vaccines was a very difficult task in that town. The road conditions were terrible, and it was hard to manage the temperature of the vaccines under the scorching sun. The vaccines that finally arrived safely were ruined when the town's power supply was cut off. Interactions with the drivers were also challenging. Not everything could be communicated in English, leading to misunderstandings and sometimes arguments. But when I finally completed the mission, I was filled with a sense of happiness. The unity I felt with the doctors, staff, locals, and patients I worked with was an irreplaceable sense of achievement. By that time, I was almost 30 and had decided to make this work my main job, forgetting about returning to my old company or America. Over the next 10 years, I grew not just as an engineer, but also as a general logistician, a staff leader, able to manage the dispatched staff. There were many dangers, and I even fell seriously ill myself, but I felt like I had found my true calling. Being single and unattached, I thought I'd keep performing these noble medical missions and live this way forever. However, I met a woman last year, and luckily we got married. Her name is Susan, and she works as a doctor with Doctors Without Borders. We worked hard together on the same team, and at some point, we realized we were attracted to each other. She told me she had feelings for me, but didn't talk about anything beyond that. "I'm 10 years older than you," she said. Yes, she was 49 at the time, 10 years older than me at 39. I always felt a bit odd about her saying that. Susan had been in this line of work longer than me, so she should know that age difference doesn't matter. There are plenty of couples with significant age gaps abroad, and it's not unusual for the woman to be older. At least, I don't think we need to worry about the age difference. To me, she is not only a respected doctor but also a beautiful and beloved partner. "I'm seriously thinking about marrying you, Susan," I said, making my intentions clear repeatedly. But she wouldn't say yes. So, I thought there might be some other reason besides age, but I didn't ask further. One day, our medical team started an emergency mission. A hospital in a conflict zone was in danger. We had to safely transport pregnant women waiting to give birth to another area. I was busy securing enough fuel for the transport. After managing to transport everyone safely to another hospital, I realized she hadn't arrived at the new location. The local staff told me Susan stayed at the original hospital. She said she wouldn't return for a while, despite the risk of the hospital being caught in the conflict. I rode a bicycle tens of kilometers back to the original hospital. There, I found her trying to make scared little children laugh. They were the siblings of the babies about to be born. We could only transport a minimum number of people, leaving behind children with many siblings. Knowing the risks, she stayed to comfort these children. If she was staying, I decided to stay with her. She thanked me with a troubled smile. That night, after the children had fallen asleep, she shared her story. "I have an older sister. When we were kids, I was frail, so our parents paid more attention to me than my sister. I always thought she must have felt lonely. Of course, those in weaker positions should be helped first, but helping them sometimes means sacrificing others. These children here, separated from their mothers and siblings-to-be, must feel so alone." After getting my medical license, I left home in America. I was healthy, so I hoped my parents would start paying more attention to my sister. I haven't been back in a long time, but I hope they are doing well, getting along. Hearing this, I felt I understood the reason behind her remarkable character. Her strong sense of self-sacrifice stemmed from her concern for her older sister. Perhaps she believes she shouldn't be happier than her sister. If she can't bring herself happiness, then I'll give it to her. The next day, as a general logistician, I confirmed the budget and devised a way to transport the remaining children to the new hospital. I managed to do it. With no more worries for the left-behind children, Susan moved to the new hospital. There, I proposed to her again. "In return for you sacrificing so much, I decided to work harder to protect you." Finally, with tears in her eyes, she said yes. When we get married, we didn't have a fancy ceremony or party. Instead, we distributed food to the less fortunate. Everyone congratulated us, and we were really happy. Afterward, I chose to return to America alone for work to support Susan. We rarely stayed in the same place, often in areas without internet. So, I needed to be in America to stay connected and provide a base for her to return to whenever she needed. That's why I re-entered the workforce as an engineer. The introduction Susan gave me from the companies she'd worked with around the world led to positive interviews everywhere. I chose this major medical equipment manufacturer because they prioritized Doctors Without Borders activities, even having a dedicated department for it. The company valued my experience and expected me to be an immediate asset. I've been giving it my all this past year, trying to meet their expectations. I gradually built good relationships with colleagues and supervisors, though I still have issues with my boss, Smith. Tom, you've been living apart from your wife since you got married, huh? You sure it's not some romance scam? Despite being a department head, he has no real understanding of Doctors Without Borders. It seems he has a relative who is an executive in the company, and I hate to say it, but he's more of a figurehead. He doesn't seem to be involved in any important work, so he's always less busy than other employees. That's why he's so annoyingly curious about my personal life. It's a real marriage, not a scam. We met, fell in love, and then got married. I answer him casually, but he always tries to prolong the conversation. Your wife is much older than you, right? Besides, she is a doctor. I can see why she'd choose someone like you. I really don't think there's any love there. Oh, well, no need to worry about us. We do have love. He looked unimpressed with my response and walked away. I sighed and got back to my piled-up paperwork. As I was sorting through documents, Emma from the next desk struck up a conversation. Tom, did you know his wife is really young? He's around 50 and she's about 30. Yet, he goes around calling other women old. What's with his obsession with youth? She is a 23-year-old young lady and often shares office gossip with me. I see. You get a lot of attention from him too, right? She made a face. I think older people can be great, but someone like he is just creepy. It's like anyone young will do for him. It's not about age. It's about what's inside. I totally agreed with her perspective. No matter how old Susan is, I love her for who she is. Last night, Susan sent me a picture, looking cheerful. Currently, she's at a refugee camp in the Middle East, caring for malnourished children. In the photo, she was smiling, surrounded by local kids. Despite their thin frames, each child's eyes sparkled with vitality, a sign that her efforts are successful. I am relieved. She looked like a mother to those kids. I remembered her once saying, I consider myself a second mother to the children I work with. Even without children of my own, I feel like I have kids all over the world. I nodded in agreement with her sentiment, recalling the conversation vividly. I opened the email again, just to glance at the picture one more time. She really is a wonderful person. Oops. Sorry. I snapped back to reality at Emma's apologetic voice. Sorry, what's up? I asked. Oh, no, I was just, that photo. Is that your wife? I'm sorry, I was peeking. She pointed to the screen of my computer. That's no problem. You're right. This is my wife. Opening personal emails on my computer at work is not something I should be doing. It's been a whole year since we got married, and I haven't seen her, so naturally, I feel lonely. Well, your wife has such a nice smile. She's naturally beautiful, and more than that, it's a smile that comes from the heart. I felt genuinely happy when Emma complimented Susan. After watching her look at the photo for a while, I said, okay, back to work, and closed the computer. No matter how lonely I am, work is work. I need to work diligently in America to support Susan if anything happens. I changed my mind and focused on work. A few days later, when I arrived at the office, there was a photo on my desk. It was of a young mother and a small child, strangers to me. As I wondered about it, Smith rushed over. Good morning, Tom. That's a photo of my wife and child. I thought it turned out well, so I decided to give a copy to everyone in the department. So, this is his wife. Just like the rumors, a couple with a significant age difference. Your wife is quite beautiful, and your kid is adorable. I couldn't say it out loud, but his wife was too beautiful for him. Of course. My wife was a former model. Feel free to display this on your desk. I guess you can't expect children from your wife, considering she's older. That's why you shouldn't marry an older woman. Excuse me, Mr. Smith. Could you please take back what you just said? Looking baffled, he replied. Huh? I haven't said anything strange. Your wife is not of childbearing age. That's why it would have been better to marry a younger wife. I'm just stating the obvious. I was trembling with anger, almost ready to punch this incredibly rude boss. How can you say that? We're fine without children. That's when Emma chimed in. Mr. Smith, that's workplace bullying. It's also sexual harassment and emotional abuse. I looked at her, and she seemed angry too. Wait, what are you talking about? Where's the harassment? I wish you wouldn't make such accusations. Do you both understand that my relative is in the upper management and still talk back to me like this? I was worried about losing my job, but I couldn't let his remarks slide. As I was pondering what to do, Emma boldly replied, I don't mind, even if I get transferred or demoted, but you owe Tom an apology for the disrespectful things you said about him and his wife. I was surprised by her courage, and also I was astounded by Smith's ignorance. Even after Emma's strong words, he said, children are expected when you get married, right? I didn't misspeak by saying you chose to marry someone who can't have them. There's nothing to apologize for. Enough, give me back the photo. Oh my, what a terrible morning. He snatched the photo from us and walked away. I repeatedly apologized and thanked Emma, who was still furious, trying to calm her down. Though it should have been me who was angry, I was grateful she stood up for me. A month passed. Smith blatantly ignored Emma and me. It didn't bother us since it didn't affect our work. However, after a month, he suddenly came to my desk. He was oddly smiling. Tom, about next month's anniversary party. It seems that employees with spouses are now expected to attend together with their partners. I remembered seeing something about the anniversary party in the company newsletter. I thought attending as a couple was the norm, but Susan probably couldn't make it. My wife is too busy with work to attend, I replied. He sneered and said, Are you sure? All employees aspiring for promotion are making arrangements to come with their spouses. It's fine if you're not interested in that. But surely, not being able to show your wife off isn't the reason, right? I felt anger rising in me again. But before I could react, he strolled back to his desk, humming a tune. Forget his comments. Your wife is doing important work. Don't worry about it, Emma whispered to me. I agreed. She was right. But that night, I received surprising news from Susan. She was coming back to America in 2 weeks for a short visit. After the current project is completed successfully, it seems that there will be a month left before the next dispatch. I jumped for joy. I finally get to meet her. I had created a place in here for times like this. We had a great time talking on the phone about where she would go and what she would eat when she returned to America. During that time, I also informed her about the anniversary party. She thought positively, saying, I'll definitely go with you. I'm very happy to have such an opportunity. Thus, we decided to attend together. 2 weeks later, we finally had the day to meet again after a long time. We spent each day feeling very happy. So to speak, this is our first day together since we got married. Our newlywed life together was rosy. Then, the day of the party came. Susan was in a classy dress, which was rental. It suited her. However, her hair and skin were a little rough after getting sunburned in Africa, so she said she would go out with minimal hair and makeup. When we entered the party venue of a luxury hotel, about half of the employees were in pairs. I also took Susan next to me and acted confidently. However, she seemed a little strange. Hey, do I look weird? I feel like people are staring at me. I told her that wasn't the case, but she seemed a little put off. Then Smith and his wife appeared. Hi, Tom. Let me introduce you to my wife, Olivia. She's beautiful, isn't she? Olivia was a former model, so she was more beautiful and had a better figure than anyone else in the audience. I also tried to introduce Susan. Nice to meet you, Olivia. This is my wife. Before I could finish my words, Smith interrupted me and started talking. Oh dear, is this Tom's mother? He said it out loud on purpose, so the employees gathered around. Not to be outdone, I shouted back. No, this is my wife, Susan. As the small crowd of people surrounding us fell silent, it was Olivia who spoke next. Wife, I thought it was your mother. Her beautiful face was distorted and ugly. Smith said, as if following her words. That's right. Everyone would think she's your mother. With that light makeup and messy hair. Did you want to stand out by bringing your parent to the party, Tom? Susan covered her face. I hated the stubbornness of the couple. The other employees looking at us were chatting about something to themselves. You made his mother cry. Why don't you take her to the exit? Oh, yeah. Ma'am, you're probably uncomfortable, so let's get out. I couldn't take it anymore. Stop it. I mentioned she's my precious wife. If you say anything more sarcastic to her, I won't tolerate it, not even from my boss or my boss's wife. When I yelled at them, Mr. and Mrs. Smith still laughed and said spitefully, "Oh, dear. He doesn't want to forgive you, honey." Huh? That's a lot of power. Even though you don't have any backing. It was at that time. A middle-aged man made his way through the crowd and came out in front of us. The man said with a pale face, "Susan, isn't it you?" When she heard that voice, she looked up, saw the man, and her eyes widened. "William." While I was still unable to understand the situation, the next time, I heard a female voice. "Excuse me. Please let me go through." The woman who came out in front of us after the man had a face that looked just like Susan. "Ah, Susan. It's really you." The middle-aged man, the woman who looked like Susan, and Susan, they all cried as they hugged each other's shoulders. All I could do was watch it. Except I heard Smith's trembling voice. "President and ma'am." After they cried for a while, Susan introduced me to them. "This is my husband, Tom. He's such a wonderful man." Then she introduced me to the two of them. "This woman is my twin sister. This is her husband, William, the president of this company." According to subsequent explanations, the woman is Susan's older sister, and her name is Sophia. In fact, this medical device manufacturing company was founded by the twins' grandfather. Susan only had 2 female twins in her generation, so she had no choice but to take a son-in-law to take over the company. That person is this middle-aged man, William. I felt embarrassed that I was working without knowing the face of the president of my company. The president had been treated as a potential son-in-law at Sophia's house from an early stage, and from Susan's perspective, it seemed like they were in love with each other. But she thought that if she had been there, her sister would have passed on that happiness to her, so she left home as soon as she got her medical license and never returned. William and Sophia got married and took over the family business, and they have been waiting for the day when Susan would come home. The 3 of them have always been good friends. As for Susan, she always gives her away to someone else without thinking about her own happiness. But it's wonderful that she found a wonderful partner and was able to meet her again like this. What a beautiful day. Sophia was so happy that he burst into tears. With the exact same gesture, Susan cried with joy as well. The president also told me with a big smile, "Tom, thank you for your continued support of Susan." I expressed my appreciation to him. The president then glared at Mr. and Mrs. Smith and said, "Smith, you said a lot of things to my precious sister-in-law. Your wife seems pretty, too, but she doesn't seem to know the manners in a situation like this." Smith shrank back, but Olivia was still glaring at him in frustration. Apparently, she was an extremely strong-willed wife. Normally, if you saw an old woman like that, you'd think she was his mother. What's wrong? Ignoring the president's request to stop, she continues speaking without admitting her fault. The most important thing for a woman is whether she's pretty or not. A beautiful woman is the most important. That's why I'm better than Sophia, no matter how much I'm the president's wife. Of course, I'm better than Susan. I don't know how she was treated and lived her life, but I thought that Olivia was a person who grew up to be a good adult, leaving behind all the things she should have known in life. It is lucky to have been born with a beautiful appearance. Coming from a good family background and was born in America, where there are no inconveniences. But I've met many people who don't. I have met many children today who have no food to eat, no water to drink, and no place to study. Also for those who I want to help and spend my time and money. I think the most beautiful human being is one with a beautiful heart. People who can laugh even if they can't see the future. People who enjoy the happiness of others as if it were their own. People who can share it with others if they have a lot. People who can hand over important things to. The wife I chose is that kind of person. Therefore, I don't really think that Sophia is beautiful. She was still talking. "Hey honey, you always say that. This is a good opportunity to say it. President, make my husband a director as soon as possible. There are relatives, too, in the executive seat." Hearing her words, Smith finally crouched down, hiding his face. The president heard it and said, "Smith, what do you mean? I'm sure our company prohibits hiring connections." Then, a man who appeared to be his relative took a step forward and answered tremblingly, "Oh, no, you see, this guy will never get promoted." Olivia yelled angrily, "What the hell are you talking about?" The bad things were compounding, and there was another person who came before us. It was Emma. She stood in front of her and said, "I'm a co-worker of Tom. My name is Nana. I'm the daughter of the president. I don't want my connections to be used, so I work under my father's maiden name." I was working without even knowing that she was the president's daughter. Emma then turned to the president and said, "It's not just my opinion. It's the opinion of the whole department. But Manager Smith is harassing the department a lot. I've recorded myself, so you can listen to it later, Dad. Even his manager's position lacks power, I think." Then Olivia screamed with the appearance of a devil. It's not like a little girl is interjecting. A father who hears such a thing is a father too. My husband is the one who deserves to be the next president. Then, Emma stood in front of her with a calm face and said, "Your husband is always making advances on me. Due to my young age. There are many other young female employees who have been sexually harassed. I have also recorded it, so you can listen to it." This time, Olivia couldn't say anything. She looked at the manager with a broken expression on his face. I too stood there unable to say anything as too many facts were spilling out all at once. Only the joyful classical music echoed through the venue. In such an awkward atmosphere, Susan was the first to make a move. She approached Olivia. Then, in a calm tone, she spoke to the couple. "You're very beautiful. Mr. Smith also cares about you very much. You too, right? You were worried too much about my husband and said a lot of things. Please talk to him often and make things up quickly." Even though she said a lot of mean things to me, she looked like an angel to me because she was able to forgive me and say things like that. She's in a better position to be angry than anyone else. Thanks to her kindness, calmness gradually returned to the venue. Several people from the crowd came up to her side and said, "You know, I stared at you because you looked exactly like the president's wife. I'm sorry if I made you feel uncomfortable." They apologized. Other employees forced themselves to praise Smith, saying things like, "He has some good qualities. He's easygoing in his department, so it's kind of easygoing." Even Olivia said to her husband, "Did I say too much to you? I just said it because you listened to me. I'm sorry. Please don't hate me." I was once again impressed by the incredible purity of Olivia's energy. Even in the project, when she is around, both anxious children and adults become relieved. Even though the staff and I don't have enough food for tomorrow, I feel like I'll be fine. She has everything, including family status, money, and good looks, but even if she lost all of those things, I still think she has the most beautiful heart in the world, and I have to live my life so that I don't feel ashamed of my wife. Thanks to her, we managed to recover from the awkwardness of the party and were able to safely complete our anniversary celebration. After the party, we planned to use the remaining days of her stay in America to go on a short trip, but I canceled it. I thought she should spend the rest of her days with William and Sophia. When I told her, she unusually expressed her disappointment. I was really looking forward to it. I felt happy but firmly responded, "They were probably looking forward to seeing you even more than me." Honestly, I was really looking forward to the trip too. But we have a long life ahead together. There's plenty of time for us. Giving up a few days for them is nothing in comparison. I decided to marry her with the commitment to bring her happiness. Her happiness is my happiness, after all. Susan thanked me profusely and enjoyed her remaining days with William and Sophia. I was invited several times, but as a regular employee, I didn't have the courage to spend private time with the president. Gradually, I started to feel that maybe I could join them one day. After she returned to conflict zones, my department underwent some changes. Firstly, Smith suddenly started learning about Doctors Without Borders. Everyone silently observed, not pointing out his previous ignorance. Then, Emma left the company. She decided to go back to university to pursue a medical career, inspired by Susan. "I want to be a cool woman like Susan. My brother's there, so the company will be fine," she said. The president and Sophia were supportive of her decision. I believed that Emma, fearless and strong, would surely become a great doctor. On a day with a pleasant breeze, I stood on the company rooftop, looking up at the sky and thought to myself, "Susan, your influence is incredible. I'll keep working harder and harder." Until yesterday, I never imagined that I would suddenly lose my job. I was supposed to continue living my ordinary, everyday life. But reality is cruel. Even with job hunting, in these difficult times for employment, It's hard to find a place that would hire someone like me. So, as a last resort, I decided to take a chance and apply to a rival company in the same industry. Little did I know that this decision would change my life. I've been looking for you. My name is Alex. I've been working at a publishing house for 7 years. I'm no longer a newcomer, but I can't yet call myself a veteran. I still need to keep pushing hard. I've started to understand various things, and now I feel like it's really showtime. My days are quite busy, but I'm satisfied with the nature of my work. I work in the sales department. We come up with campaigns to promote book sales and visit bookstores directly to suggest display methods to the staff. Essentially, we're the action team for selling books. I've always enjoyed talking to people, and since I was young, I've had unusually high communication skills. Therefore, sales is a job that's perfect for me. I can tell that I have a good reputation in the company, and my relationships with colleagues are solid. Alex, I'm not really good at talking, even though I'm in sales. Really. I never felt that way about you. Well, we've known each other for a long time. I struggle when meeting people for the first time. Was it the same when you first talked to me? Not really. For some reason, you're very easy to talk to. Yeah, I hear that quite a bit. Exactly. It took me a while to get along with the other seniors. Right. I remember you mentioned that once. Yeah, I felt quite uncomfortable for a few months. But you've been doing great for 3 years now. I observed you, Alex, and found my own way. So, I'm really thankful to you. What's up? You don't usually talk like this. I just think it's important to express gratitude once in a while, so I don't forget my beginnings. Well, it's fine. You're doing well, and you'll be okay in the future. I've had conversations like this with several juniors and seniors. Of course, the details vary, but the gist is that they look up to me or use me as a role model, and their admiration or reliance on me is heartening, even though I don't recall doing anything special. However, it's gratifying to be appreciated like this. So, I'm happily and smoothly working at the company, and I truly believe this job is my calling. I was making my bookstore rounds when my cell phone rang, but at that moment, I was cutting it close to the scheduled time at the bookstore. I decided to ignore the call for now and kept driving. However, the phone just wouldn't stop ringing. Seriously, what is it? I reluctantly pulled over into a convenience store parking lot and answered the call. I'm in a hurry right now. If it's nothing important, call me later, okay? Alex, something terrible has happened. What's wrong? Why are you so frantic? The president is stepping down. Is that true? Who would call at a time like this just to lie? Sorry. I got a bit flustered and said something stupid. The president had been suffering from a chronic heart condition for quite some time. Recently, he had been taking more sick leaves due to his illness, unable to fully perform his role as the company's president. I knew this, but the news of his resignation still shocked me. He was capable, and his presence was a big part of my driving force to dedicate to my job. I owed the president a great deal, and I wasn't bothered to do anything for him. However, there are limits to what can be done. I'm not a doctor, and even if I were, did he make a full recovery from the chronic heart condition under my care? Considering his situation, I probably couldn't have been much help. The news of his resignation and worsening health condition broke my heart, and for a while, I struggled to maintain my focus. After the president stepped down, Ethan, the former vice president, took over the position. Equipped with a sharp mind and academic credentials, he rapidly ascended to vice president in an impressively short time. I believe he's been with the company for about 10 years, but as far as I know, he's the fastest to have reached the vice presidency since the company's founding. I hear Ethan, the vice president, is really good at his job. Yeah, I've heard that rumor too. Right, he wouldn't be that young and a vice president otherwise. They say, in terms of career advancement, he's the fastest in the company. Is that so? He's still in his early 30s, right? Being a vice president at that age is incredible. I can fathom how he managed to get there. And he's also quite good looking. So he's very popular among the female staff. Definitely. I've heard the women in the office talking excitedly about him countless times. It's sort of unfair, isn't it, to have so much talent concentrated in one person? Well, let's just do our best, right? If we start comparing ourselves to talented people, we'll just feel miserable. True. We just have to work hard in our own way. I can't remember where I heard it, at the cafeteria, or maybe during office frank chatter, but I've heard conversations like this several times. In short, even within the company, the vice president is recognized as a capable man. As a rank-and-file employee, I hardly have any interaction with him and have barely had a conversation, but there's no doubt he's capable when it comes to work. I believed that if Ethan assumed the presidency position, the company's business would thrive. That's what I thought. It's been half a year since Ethan took over the presidency. During this time, it became clear that Ethan is a person who seeks efficiency above all. Cost-cutting seemed to be his mantra, and he insisted on implementing it throughout the company. Of course, cutting costs is crucial for any company. Heavy expenses reduce company profits, so it's obviously better to minimize costs as much as possible. However, President Ethan's commitment to cost-cutting was overly rigorous, even for projects where a significant amount of budget was necessary for success. He demanded cost reductions. He even insisted on slashing the budget in cases where a small amount of additional cost would have made everything run smoothly. In such cases, we're left with no option but to spend more time, not money. The concept of time as money seems to be absent in President Ethan's mind. His management policy, focused solely on cost-cutting, started to affect the employees. Long hours became the norm, and in that aspect, costs were clearly rising. As we began regularly working on weekends, all of us were developing dissatisfaction with the deteriorating work environment. I can't keep up with President Ethan's management policy. I often heard such murmurs. I, too, was a victim, so I understood these sentiments. However, the atmosphere wasn't conducive to voicing these concerns directly to President Ethan. This was because a senior colleague, who merely made a light suggestion to him, was threatened with termination. Do you want to be fired? Hey, did you hear about that incident? Yeah, the senior who was suddenly threatened with being fired, right? That's right. I heard he was threatened in a very harsh manner. It was so tyrannical that even other seniors couldn't speak out anymore. It's like dealing with a dictator. I feel bad for senior. He didn't even argue, just suggested something. Yeah, that's too harsh. And to be thrown out on the street without any preparation. Exactly. And there's no time to find another job. Are you planning to leave us? I haven't decided yet, but I'm considering looking for another jobs as one of my options. I agree with you. The incumbent president is overly focused on management-oriented approaches, but we're so tied down, there's no time to even think about job hunting. Apparently, everyone's so exhausted from extended working hours and weekend work to the point where our brains aren't functioning. It's sad the company has changed a lot. Now, the management won't care about the horrible working conditions. Thinking back, it was a much better atmosphere under the leadership of Mr. David. Absolutely. This story about being threatened with termination by President Ethan just for making a suggestion had spread throughout the company. Because of this, the atmosphere in the office became even heavier. The working conditions are worsening, and the office culture, where nobody can express their own mind freely, is palpable. I can't see this company succeeding in the future the way it is now. At this rate, there is no future for the company for sure. Actually, I am adopted son of the founder-president of the company. When I was little, I lost my parents and was living in an orphanage. David, my current father, adopted me. Though he was an adoptive father, he raised me with exceptional care and love. My memories of my biological parents are overshadowed by those of my adoptive father and mother. Being raised by them, I believe, made me who I am today. In other words, I owe them a great deal. That's why I was deeply shocked when David stepped down his presidency due to chronic illness. Dad, is it true that you're stepping down from your presidency? Yes, I've realized that I've reached my limit. If it was that bad, you should have told me. I didn't want to show my weakness to you. Don't be so stubborn about that. I'm an old man. I don't want to show my weaknesses to my son. I get that, but still, I'm sure and confident that Ethan could lead the company. He's really capable at his job. Everyone in the company knows that, so I'm not worried about his ability. Yes, he'll do even better than me. Maybe, but most of all, thank you for everything so far. Let me know if you ever need help. You should focus on your work now. Just keep me in the back of your mind. See you. That was the conversation I had with my father when I called him impulsively after hearing he was stepping down. Contrary to his belief, the atmosphere in the company is now at its worst. I've come to think that Ethan must have been pretending to be a generous president in front of my father. Deceiving my father like that, he must be talented indeed. However, the publishing company I work for was built from the ground up by my father. I have immense respect for him in that regard. The fact that the company has now turned into a management-oriented, horrible place is something I simply cannot tolerate. Ethan now rules the company like a tyrannical dictator, instilling fear-based control throughout the organization. Obviously, I'm the only one who can dare to speak up against the incumbent president's policy, considering my position as the son of the founder and former president. I spent several days thinking about what I should say to President Ethan. Then, I made up my mind and knocked on the door of the president's office. There was no response initially, so I knocked harder. "Come in." I heard President Ethan's lethargic voice, so I opened the door and entered. President Ethan was sitting back in his chair, feet on the desk. I was surprised but tried not to show it and started, "May I have a moment?" "What is it, Alex?" "It seems there's some dissatisfaction among the staff." "What? What do you mean?" "Since you became president, there's been a change in management style. The company's profits are up." "What's the problem?" "You emphasize cost-cutting, right?" "Yes. It's necessary for maximizing profits." "I understand that, but the extreme cost-cutting has led to excessive burdens on the staff, such as overtime and working weekends have become the norm, leading to employee burnout." "And you're saying what exactly?" "No one's ever brought such complaints to me." "Are you sure it's not just your misunderstanding?" "No, it's not a misunderstanding. In fact, there's talk among the staff of considering the possibility of finding better jobs." "Who specifically?" "I'd rather not name names, but there's definitely a pervasive atmosphere among the staff. They can leave if they want. Our performance is good. We can just recruit more. There's a possibility of a mass exodus. It would be hard to fill those gaps with new hires. We can just hire experienced people. It's not a problem." This might be futile. President Ethan doesn't understand the ground reality. It's a typical rift between the field and the upper management, but he's not aware of the potential disaster it could cause. If things continue this way, there will undoubtedly be numerous resignations. Can't something be done? "You're saying there's a problem with my policy?" "Yes. Considering the future of the company, it can't sustain like this." "I see. I understand what you're trying to say. Thank you for understanding. I'll consider it for now." "Thank you, I appreciate it." I left the president's office without feeling any real assurance. This might be futile. Feeling like my efforts were in vain, I went home. The next day, when I came to the office, my colleagues looked at me strangely and whispered among themselves. I checked in the bathroom mirror to see if something was on my face, but there was nothing. Feeling uncomfortable with the strange atmosphere, I headed to my desk and sat down. But the odd vibe didn't subside. I started to get irritated by colleagues glancing at me. Unable to bear it any longer, I was about to confront one of them when someone spoke to me from behind. "Alex, can I talk to you for a moment?" "What is it?" "You were in charge of the book scheduled for release in 2 months, right?" "Yes, what about it?" "The book due in 2 months was by an author who had several bestsellers. I had been working on various plans for its promotion. There's a leak suggesting that you disclosed information about the book that wasn't supposed to be released yet." "What?" "There's also an email that's supposedly definitive proof of this information leak." "I don't understand what you're talking about." I was confused, struck by a mix of emotions over being accused of something I had no memory of. Me, leaking information. That couldn't be passable. My computer security is extremely tight, and I would never speak of such matters outside the company. It's unthinkable that I would make such a fundamental mistake now. I had a close call with something similar when I was a newbie and had been extremely cautious ever since. Caught in a maelstrom of confusion, I saw President Ethan smirking as he approached me. "Alex, you've made a fatal mistake." I realized everything when President Ethan appeared. I had been set up by him. "I don't recall doing anything like that. Regardless of what you say, there's evidence against you." It was a shrewd move by President Ethan. No matter how much I tried to defend myself, I knew it was futile. Any words I could muster would only deepen my predicament. You were a competent employee, but I can't let this go unpunished. You are fired, effective immediately," he said triumphantly, then left the scene. I knew it was useless to protest, so I accepted my dismissal and left the company. Ethan's true nature was far worse than my father had ever imagined. What would Dad think if he knew about this? This news might even affect his chronic heart condition, so I couldn't bring myself to tell Dad about my termination. It was as if Ethan had hijacked the company my father built. With nowhere to vent my anger, I started looking for a new job. Though I had been satisfied with my work in publishing, given the way I was kicked out, I decided to try a different industry. I wanted to find a new job as soon as possible because doing nothing brought up dark feelings, whether I liked it or not. But with the ongoing recession in Japan, finding a mid-career position wasn't easy. I was invited for 5 job interviews, but unfortunately, none of them were successful. After 5 consecutive failed job interviews, my spirits sank further, and I began drinking more. I even started smoking again after 5 years. I spent about 2 weeks aimlessly browsing the internet, watching useless videos. I couldn't stand such a lifestyle any longer because I had poured my heart and soul into my job at the publishing house. I can't end up like this. So I began to think about work again. Though I was done with publishing, I thought that, considering my career, staying in the same field might be the better option. There's no doubt that my abilities would be best utilized there. I then remembered an advertisement for a job opening at a major publishing house, a rival to the one I had left, that I had seen in a job magazine. I quickly turned to that page and saw that I still had time. I decided to send in my resume. If it didn't work out, I would just consider my options then. I awaited the reply. To my surprise, the reply came much quicker than expected, and moreover, they wanted to schedule an interview as soon as possible. Feeling hopeful, I checked the interview date, which was very soon. Perhaps they were in urgent need of staff. Lucky for me, I psyched myself up, determined to get the job. On the day of the job interview, I left home quite early to avoid being late and arrived at the publishing house 20 minutes beforehand. Since it was a rival to my former employer, I knew a lot about this company. They published unique books and had many bestsellers. I informed the receptionist of my job interview appointment, and she directed me to the waiting room. After a 10-minute wait, a competent-looking man appeared and said, "It's a bit early, but let's start your interview." He then led me to the interview room. After he said "here" at the door and left, I thanked him. After a moment, I knocked on the door. "Please come in," said a melodious female voice, and I entered the room. Inside was a woman sitting alone. She was a young woman with long hair dyed blonde, which suited her exceptionally well. As we exchanged greetings, I thought to myself, she's beautiful, but she seems familiar. And then it hit me. She was the president of this publishing house. I remembered seeing her photo somewhere before. She had black hair in that picture, which is why I didn't recognize her immediately, with a different look. Why is the president conducting the interview? I was confused. I had never heard of a company president personally conducting an interview, unless it was for some high-profile position. Her name was Emily, if I recall correctly. You worked at a publishing house before, didn't you? Yes, for about 7 years. Why did you leave? There were various reasons. Could you tell me more about it? You might not believe me, but that's when I told her about what had happened at the publishing house where I was fired. There was no point in lying. She would see right through it for sure. Looking into her eyes made me think that way. So, I told her everything honestly, without any deception. After I finished speaking, President Emily closed her eyes and seemed lost in thought for a while. Then, suddenly taking my hand, she said, "Do you remember me? I've always wanted to meet you." As I stared into her face, holding her hand, something in my mind clicked. Could it be? I gasped and stared intently into her face. "I've always wanted to meet you. When I was 7 years old, I lost my parents in a car accident. No relatives were willing to take me in, so I was sent to an orphanage. Suddenly placed in a facility with no familiar faces, I spent a while in solitude. My personality was naturally shy, and I was deeply saddened by the loss of my parents. Others were somehow hesitant to interact with me, or maybe they didn't know how to approach me. About a week after I arrived at the facility, I noticed a girl who, like me, was spending time alone. That girl was Emily. At the time, I didn't understand why she was playing by herself. But after we became friends, I learned she was shy like me and couldn't fit into groups. Knowing the painful sting of loneliness, I started playing with her. Do you like reading books? Yes, I love them. Then let's read together. Okay, let's read this picture book, taking turns to read each line out loud. That's how we ended up reading lots of picture books together. Sharing the same story together was truly wonderful. I'm sure these memories influenced my decision to work at a publishing house. They were that important to me. After reading picture books, we expressed our thoughts for drawing. My drawings were far from good, but her art had a quality that struck a chord in the heart. Emily, you're really good at drawing. Really. I'm so happy. Her smile after saying that was truly dazzling. I think I liked Emily, but I hadn't grown enough to recognize such romantic feelings. After all, I was only 7 years old. It felt like we were the only two people in the world, enjoying our time together. But those days came to an end. I was to be adopted by foster parents. While I'm grateful to my adopted parents, at that time, I was furious about being separated from Emily. We didn't even think to exchange contact information. We were just too young. And now, here she was in front of me, beautifully transformed into President Emily. After 20 years, after the interview, I was hired on the spot and started working at her publishing company. I was assigned to the sales department, and I sincerely tacked my task. I understood the nature of the job in sales. There were some differences in approach, but I quickly learned and implemented them. Being capable and having fairly good communication skills, I soon became friendly with my colleagues. I was truly blessed to work in a good environment where I could fully engage in my tasks. While everything was going smoothly, I encountered the last person I wanted to meet. Hey, Alex, what are you doing in a place like this? President Ethan, smirking and speaking sarcastically, stirred up my anger. But I knew better than to rise to this provocation. What about you, Ethan? It's not like you to personally visit bookstores. My words weren't meant to be sarcastic, but they seemed to hit a nerve. He replied, his face showing anger. Our company's performance has been declining. So, I have to take matters into my own hands. Really, all my employees are useless. You haven't changed, Ethan. That's why your company's performance is dropping. What did you say, Alex? Don't get cheeky with me. Actually, I think that's the truth. You're not cut out to be a president. Don't get cocky. You're unemployed. I'm not unemployed. I work for a publishing house. Your rival, in fact. What? Our company is doing well. Well, good luck to you. I ended the conversation there and left the bookstore. Nothing good comes from associating with him. I was happy now. The past didn't matter anymore. Don't think you can get away with this, Alex. Ethan's angry shout echoed behind me, but I ignored it and walked away. After that encounter with President Ethan, life went on as usual, and I happily immersed myself in my work, almost forgetting about his existence. Then, one day, a colleague approached me, looking worried. Hey, have you seen this? What's wrong? Why are you so panicked? Just take a look at this. I looked at the smartphone screen handed to me, and it showed a post from Ethan's social media account. Reading it, I felt the blood drain from my face. In his post, he stated that I had been fired from my previous publishing house for leaking information. Moreover, he questioned the propriety of me working so comfortably at my current publishing house. When would he stop interfering with my life? I felt a fierce anger boiling up from the depths of my heart. His post on social media was sending the wrong messages to my business associate, who had no idea of the story behind, as if I were indeed guilty of the leak, a person without any sense of lawfulness. Consequently, the clients started to cancel their contract with us. I was upset and freaked out by the situation. If such impact persists, I would have no choice but to leave this publishing house. After several contracts had canceled in just a couple of days, I was completely exhausted and requested day off. For about a week, I didn't go out and just lay on my bed, staring at the ceiling. I had no appetite to eat or drink anything. Completely worn out, both mentally and physically, I did nothing but sleep. I thought it might be the end for me, when I received a call from President Emily. Alex, are you alive? Barely. You've really been through a lot. It's not over yet. It's still ongoing. I guess I should quit the company. What are you talking about? That issue has already been resolved. What? Don't you know? Your former colleagues at the publishing house have been posting a lot on social media. No, I hadn't had the energy to look at anything. Then check it now. To summarize the conversation, my former colleagues had been posting on social media about how Ethan had framed me and got me fired. Allegedly, they discovered Ethan had fabricated the leaking theory because they noticed that his story was just unrealistic. Also, they alleged that they were grateful to me for representing them by voicing opinions against the company's policies. As a result of my aforementioned action, I was fired. Subsequently, the employees apparently rebelled against President Ethan, asserting that kicking me out was an abuse of his authority. A former colleague from the publishing house told me over the phone, "Now, President Ethan's dignity is completely gone. Ethan's reputation hit rock bottom, while the support for me, for having stood up to him, only grew among my former colleagues." The entire episode spread on social media, enhancing my reputation beyond the publishing industry. This, in turn, boosted the reputation of the publishing house I currently worked at. Social media can spread bad news in an instant, but good news travels just as fast. The stock value of Ethan's publishing house kept plummeting, and its performance rapidly deteriorated. As for Ethan, he resigned from his position to take responsibility for the loss. Meanwhile, Emily's publishing house, with steadily rising performance, acquired Ethan's company, becoming the largest publishing house in the industry. Ever since I met you, Alex, only good things have happened. You really were my destiny. Emily and I started dating around the time of the acquisition and will soon be married. I've already met and greeted her parents. When we visited my father to introduce Emily, despite his chronic heart condition, he seemed peaceful and content. He said, "The two of you ending up together, there's nothing more I could ask for." My name is John Smith. I work at a company that digitalizes board games. We make software versions of games like Monopoly, Catan, Virus, and various card games, which are originally played on a board. Ever since I was little, I've been fond of board games. We didn't have video games in my house when I was a kid. So, whenever relatives visited or friends came over, we often played games like checkers or card games like poker. I enjoyed that a lot. It was what led me to get a job at a company that blends video games with card games. I come from a liberal arts background, not a science one. So instead of creating games, I work in an administrative role, like sales. My parents were normal working class folks. They placed their hopes and dreams in me, their only son. Thus, they raised me with a lot of care and seriousness. Sometimes, their seriousness meant they were quite strict. One of their rules was no video games and no comics allowed. While I wasn't forbidden from reading comics or playing games at my friends' houses, we never had any video games or comics at home. My parents were a bit old-fashioned, believing that games could damage the brain. They thought comics were corrupting, and that playing games all the time would turn you into a game addict. They had these ideas. Even though I knew several friends who were whizzes at games but still had great grades, and just because someone was good at fighting games didn't mean they were violent. I didn't see any causal relationship there, so I often found myself puzzled by my parents' views. But their beliefs were firm, and no matter how many times I said, "That's not true," they wouldn't be convinced. And then they would say, "John, we're saying this because we care about your future." When they put it that way, I couldn't argue back. I knew they weren't saying these things out of hatred for me, so I wasn't particularly upset. They cared about me in their own way, just with different values. So, I never disliked my strict parents. In fact, I quite liked them. Being an only child, I wasn't sure how to interact with kids my age at first. When I started going to kindergarten, I preferred home and was scared of kindergarten, but my parents never scolded me for that. "You'll have fun once you make friends," my mom would patiently say to me, crying and scared of going to kindergarten. While my parents were generally strict, they rarely yelled or were needlessly angry. My dad was intimidating, though. That was only when I misbehaved or did something I shouldn't. They never scolded me when I was behaving. However, I grew up with a mindset, be good, and my parents will be nice, misbehave, and they'll be scary, leading me to overly worry about being the good child to avoid their displeasure. So, when my parents said, No games or no comics. I eventually backed down, and even if I wanted to learn karate, if they said, "It's dangerous, you'll get hurt," or "It's like fighting," I would eventually give in, even though I thought it was just their prejudice. To make my parents happy, I focused all my energy on getting good grades and being praised for my test scores, turning into a child who only concentrated on academic achievements. My parents used to say, "Physical education won't be useful in the future, and it doesn't matter if you're good or bad at sports once you become a company employee. Just stay healthy enough. That's all you need from exercise," they would advise. I loved being active and playing with my friends, so I felt sad when they said that. However, I became hooked on chess after my dad bought me a set one day, and I started playing it all the time. This kind of game, like chess, sharpens the mind. A sharp mind leads to a good job with a high salary in the future. My dad said, "Is that what happiness is?" I asked. "Yes. With money, you can have anything," he replied. Looking back, I realize it was a very biased way of educating, but under my parents' somewhat skewed love, I grew up well. I started playing chess with my dad, and as it wasn't enough, I began playing checkers and card games like poker. With friends, I played easier to understand games like checkers and poker, and with my dad or grandfather, I played chess. That's how I grew up with analog games. I also played games like Scrabble with relatives, and sometimes character-themed card games. My parents didn't like them much, saying, "The designs are childish or they look like comic drawings," but when I insisted, saying, "It's popular at school, please," they sometimes agreed to buy them. Video games, which I could only play at my friends' houses, were very interesting. But unlike my friends who could practice at home, I, who could only play at their houses, was naturally worse at games than them. So, my friends would say, "John is not good, so just watch." That's what I usually heard. I used to wonder, if there's a game that makes me think, would my parents buy it for me? Back when I was young, computers were just becoming common, but there wasn't the abundance of information we have today. So, while I might have found brain-teasing puzzle games if I had looked, I was unaware of their existence. And even if my parents knew about them, they never told me. Gradually, I started buying books with puzzles, crosswords, and such. If it was something like that, my parents would sometimes buy it for me when we went shopping together. By the time I was in the upper grades of elementary school, I began to prefer books of word puzzles and quizzes. Some of my friends were not just into games but also started having smartphones, but as expected, my parents forbade me from getting one. They said it would cut into my study time if I started using social media. It was expensive and not something I could buy with my allowance. Thus, I gave up on it easily. Growing up this way, without much exposure to technology, I naturally leaned towards the liberal arts when considering my future path in middle school. I thought about going into science, but by then, I had become engrossed in reading. I even started to write my own novels, filling up college notebooks with handwritten stories. I didn't realize until I was an adult that many people try their hand at drawing comics or writing novels, and back then, I thought, maybe I'm a pretty amazing person for being able to write this much in middle school. I fantasized about becoming the youngest genius novelist. My books piled up in stores, and these fantasies went even further. In my imagination, my books became bestsellers, got turned into movies, and I thought about how I would respond in interviews. That was my middle school life, filled with such unfocused daydreams. And then I became a high school student. It was a regular co-ed school, and I chose the liberal arts without hesitation. In my high school, students were divided into liberal arts and science classes, with the science classes having just a few more students than the liberal arts ones. I was surprised when I got to my liberal arts class. Out of 40 students, 30 were girls. Only 10 boys, including me. It was kinda awkward. Up until middle school, I was a quiet, nerdy of guy who hardly interacted with girls. I enjoyed talking about the novels I read with other quiet, nerdy guys. So, suddenly being in a class where boys were outnumbered by girls made me feel uneasy. I never expected the gender ratio to be so skewed. Conversely, in the science classes, the ratio was about 30 boys to 10 girls. There were times I thought maybe I should have gone into science, but I had already decided on a future in liberal arts. I was determined to work in sales or administration at a game company. When I mentioned this to my parents, they said, "Isn't sales a tough job if you're not good at talking? Wouldn't you be more suited for desk work, John?" That's what they said. But still, I wanted to work in sales at a game company, to be able to talk with people from various gaming companies. The reason I wanted to work for a game company was because, ever since I was little, I had thought it would be great if there were video games for table games, and it would be great if there were video games that made you think. By the time I got to high school, I had learned that puzzle games and the like had been around for a while, but my admiration for companies that made interesting and intellectually stimulating games hadn't changed. Let's call that company Company A. Company A primarily turned board games and games like Monopoly into video games. I thought if I told my parents I wanted to work in sales at a gaming company, they might understand. That's what I believed. By the way, John, you always say you want to work in sales, but what kind of industry do you want to work in? There are so many types of sales jobs, like in finance or telecommunications. There's really no end to the options. My parents would ask whenever we talked about my career path. I carefully chose my words to avoid opposition. You know, when I was little, I was so happy when Mom and Dad bought me chess and checkers, and then you bought me all sorts of puzzles, right? Yes, and, well, I want to work in sales at Company A, which sells chess and other games as video games. My parents didn't look pleased. What? A video game company? Forget about such a fickle industry. They opposed, as I had expected, but I wasn't discouraged. When I was younger, I held back my desires to avoid being disliked by my parents. But when it comes to employment, I can't just agree with everything they say. But it wasn't worth having a fight akin to cutting my parents off just to have my way. So, I opted to convince them in a way that would make them agree. It was my first real attempt at a sales pitch. I was now selling the idea of working at Company A to my parents. If I failed, I'd humbly accept that I wasn't cut out for sales and would join a stable industry, as they suggested. Sitting at a desk, I spoke with sincerity. The reason I've managed to maintain good grades is because, from a young age, you both taught me the fun of using my brain with games like chess and checkers. Nowadays, kids are moving away from analog and towards digital games, something you both know, right? Yes, we do. So, I believe the area is shifting to digital. I want to sell intellectually stimulating games that children and young people can get passionate about. I think I spent about an hour persuading them. Initially, my parents were not receptive, but eventually, they seemed to be swayed by my enthusiasm and agreed. Finally, I was able to go to college with my parents' approval and got hired at Company A. Since I aspired to be in sales, I was assigned to the sales department right from the start. There, I met someone significant. Mr. Johnson, the GM. Johnson had impressive sales records and was intelligent, having graduated from a prestigious university. He was exceptionally skilled in speaking. He had a knack for choosing pleasing and persuasive words. A kind of talent, I thought. He secured deals one after another with his eloquence. He became a GM at an unusually young age. The president of the company seemed to hold Johnson in high regard, almost always agreeing with what he said. He probably thought it would be troublesome if Johnson was displeased AMD moved to a competitor. In my 3 years since joining the company, I sensed this dynamic. Since the president behaved this way, other employees often acted in ways to stay on Johnson's good side. Being disliked by Johnson could be risky since he had some connection to the president. One might even be driven to resign if cornered by the president and his entourage. With this in mind, everyone seemed to have become yes-men to Johnson. In the midst of all this, I was assigned to Johnson's direct department just as he was promoted to the GM of the sales department. It seemed that I had quickly caught Johnson's eye. This was because I just couldn't stand the thought of being disliked by anyone. I was a typical yes man, unable to say no. As a result, I was always burdened with unreasonable tasks and menial work by Johnson. It was during this time, "Hey, John, you're coming with me for the consultation tomorrow, right?" that he said to me. I was taken aback by his sudden request and could only respond with a yes. "The negotiation tomorrow." "Yay, that's right. Hey, you've printed documents for me several times, haven't you?" I was often tasked with printing documents and other trivial tasks for Johnson, but I never really checked the contents. I mean, It didn't seem right to scrutinize other people's work too closely. If it were someone in my team, sharing work details would be necessary, but my superior's documents might contain confidential information. So, I hadn't looked closely at the contents. Why are you looking at me like that? You haven't checked the contents of my documents. No, I haven't. You're really slow. Tomorrow's deal is worth 20 million. You know the game company Anderson, right? It's a consultation with them. 20 million. Hearing the amount, I was astounded. Why would you involve me in such an important negotiation? Because you're convenient, he replied. Probably he thought I was useful as a yes man and fairly efficient at my job. Got it. Be at our company's meeting room B at 9 a.m. tomorrow. Understood. I responded to Johnson and quickly checked the details for tomorrow's negotiation. And the next day, wow, a wide world awaited me. The weather forecast had indeed predicted snow for today, but it had accumulated impressively. I had set my alarm to wake up an hour earlier than usual, thinking it would be bad to be late for the negotiation. I left home an hour earlier than usual, hurrying to catch the bus, walking briskly on the sidewalk in my snow boots. That's when it happened. The screeching sound of brakes, followed by a loud thud. A car had overturned on the road behind where I was walking. Where I lived was a rural mountainous area, with hardly any cars or people around. I hurried to the car. I helped a woman out of the vehicle. Fortunately, the female driver didn't seem to have any major injuries and came out of the car. "Are you okay?" I asked. Then, the woman said, "I'm fine," she said, brushing back her long hair. Seeing her face, my heart skipped a beat. She was incredibly beautiful. At first, I thought she might be a celebrity or a model. But since I didn't recognize her, she must be an ordinary person. Regaining my composure, I spoke to the woman. "It's dangerous here. Let's move away a bit." Fearing a fuel leak from the car, I supported her as we moved away from it. The car had mounted the sidewalk, so a traffic jam seemed unlikely. But the more I looked at her, the more beautiful she seemed. She was about 5'3", with a slender figure and a small face. Her long hair was glossy and well kept. Noticing me staring intently, she looked at me with a puzzled expression. Well, it seems like you're not hurt, but you know, with car accidents, sometimes the pain comes later, so we should probably call an ambulance, and the police too. I'm so sorry." No, it's okay. The driving conditions are tough with all the snow. I had chains on, but it seems it got stuck. The road appeared uneven, which probably caused her to slip and crash. I made her sit nearby and called the police and an ambulance. Both arrived shortly after. The woman had introduced herself as Anderson. I ended up accompanying Anderson in the ambulance. While Anderson was being questioned by the paramedics and having her blood pressure taken, I made a call to my company. Thinking about the heavy snow and the likely traffic issues causing delays or absences, I waited for someone to answer the phone. "Hello, this is John." "Hi, John. What's up? Sorry to bother you, but I've just helped a driver who slipped off the road. There's no one else to accompany her, so I'm going to stay with her. Could you let them know I'll be a little late? I'm really sorry." "Sure." After hanging up, I reflected on the situation. There was a 20 million deal happening, but my role was minimal, just being an extra body and carrying stuff. I had gone through the documents the night before, but there was no plan for me to present anything. It was a minor role to be called in at the last minute, but accompanying the woman in front of me seemed more critical. Her life could be at stake. So, I waited, ready to assist in any way I could, and then boarded the ambulance with her. "I'm so sorry. It was my carelessness," she apologized. "No, the weather played a part too. Just focus on your health right now," I reassured her with a smile. She seemed very apologetic throughout. I stayed until her checks were completed. It turned out she had recently moved from another state and wasn't familiar with the area. I don't have many friends here. My parents are still alive but not nearby. So I really appreciate your help. "Thank you. It's nothing. I hope your tests come back clear." "Well, I should be going." I was about to leave when she spoke again. "Could I have one of your business cards?" she asked. Then she added, "Oh, I didn't introduce myself, did I? I'm sorry. My name is Catherine Anderson. I'm self-employed, so I don't have a business card." "Oh, I see. Thank you for letting me know." I took out a business card. My name is John Smith. Oh, from Company A. She recognized. Are you familiar with it? That's great to hear. After a brief conversation, I left her hospital room. It was already 1 p.m. The negotiation must have ended by now. I went straight to Johnson's office as soon as I arrived at work. As expected, Johnson was furious. What is this nonsense? Are you taking your job as a professional lightly? He blurted out. I apologized wholeheartedly. I am extremely sorry. Regardless of the circumstances, my absence from the negotiation was a fact. It was inevitable that I would be reprimanded for it. I could have left Anderson there and come to work, but I chose not to. However, I had no regrets about my choice. I didn't want to be so callous as to leave someone who might be injured, but being scolded for taking this job lightly is something I can accept. You're probably lying about helping the driver of a slipped car, right? I know it. You just overslept, and because of the heavy snow, the transport was paralyzed, and you gave up on coming to work, right? You just didn't want to bother, right? You thought you could get away with it by blaming it on a slip accident, which are common in heavy snow, right? You fool. I deeply regret being late. However, the accident was real. Shut up. Don't lie to me. If you had just admitted to oversleeping or missing the bus due to the snow, I might have considered it. But you made up a ridiculous excuse. It's not an excuse. Regardless of the snow, I left my house early to not be late for the important negotiation. Shut up. Liar. You're fired. Fired. I was shocked. I had braced myself for a severe reprimand or for not being given significant tasks for a while, but the sudden termination was dizzying. Wait, please. Firing me is too much. Shut up. I've already talked to the head of HR. We're just waiting for the president's approval. I admit my fault for being late, and I truly regret causing any inconvenience. There were others who were late or absent due to the heavy snow. They weren't reprimanded, and I was being singled out because today was the day of the negotiation. I understood that, but being fired seemed excessive. Shut up. Snow or whatever. As a working adult, it's expected to not be late. If heavy snow is expected, it's common sense to make arrangements like staying at a hotel near the office the night before or leaving home an hour earlier in the morning. And what did you do? You just casually show up late. It was a $20 million deal. Do you understand? I trusted you enough to let you get involved. Do you get it? Once you lose trust, it's never coming back. I was completely in the wrong. I deeply regret being late. But, to be fired. Shut up. You're fired. Get out. I was declared fired just like that. The next month would be the procedural period leading up to my termination, and I was instructed to use my remaining paid leave during this time. I trudged home, but due to numerous traffic restrictions, the usually 1-hour journey took about 2 hours. Was it really my fault? I was in distress. If I hadn't accompanied her in the ambulance, would I have made it to the meeting on time? No, even if I had headed to the office at that moment, I probably would have been late anyway. If I was going to be late, wasn't it more humane to accompany the injured person in front of me? Or was it unnecessary meddling? Was I nosy? Tears started to flow. What should I have done? Was abandoning her and going to the office the common sense? Did I really make a decision worthy of being fired? But, even though her injuries were minor, she had hurt various parts of her body. There was also the possibility that she had hit her head. Leaving someone like that alone. I couldn't find an answer no matter how much I thought about it. I finally reached home. I didn't feel like changing clothes, eating, or even taking a shower. I just flopped onto my bed. Usually, I'd never lie on the bed without taking a bath first. But at that moment, none of that mattered. And so, I fell asleep, weighed down by a heavy heart. The next morning, I turned on the TV aimlessly. Checking the weather forecast had become a part of my daily routine. But now, I guess there's no need to check anymore. I let out a wry laugh. My throat was parched from sleeping without drinking anything. That's when it happened. Huh. Seeing the face on the TV, I was stunned. There was Catherine Anderson, the beautiful woman I had helped the day before, featured on a morning show. Catherine Anderson, I exclaimed in astonishment. Yes, that was her. Catherine Anderson was the name of a famous, masked female chess player. She stood at the pinnacle of female chess players in the country, but had been famous since her student days. To hide her identity, she played chess wearing a mask. Even though she was no longer a student, she had said that the mask had become a part of her, and she rarely took it off. This Catherine Anderson revealing her face had become a topic on the morning news. But wait, the lady from yesterday introduced herself as Catherine Anderson. I was puzzled. Could it be someone who just looked similar? No, wait, it was a pseudonym. Catherine Anderson was the president of the Anderson Corporation. So, Catherine Anderson must have been a pseudonym, and her real name was Catherine Anderson. I couldn't believe that the beautiful woman I helped yesterday was the famous genius chess player, Catherine Anderson. As I was still in shock, a call came from my company. Expecting it to be about administrative procedures, I answered the call with a heavy heart. Hello. Yes. John. Just come to the office now. What? It was Johnson, the GM. He usually sounded haughty, but he seemed rushed now. Confused, I asked. I thought I was fired. Is this about some paperwork? I was told we'd handle it by mail. Forget that. Your termination is cancelled. Just come quickly. Johnson's request was vague and urgent. Reluctantly, I took a shower, got ready, and headed to the office. There, I was astonished. I was directed to the reception room next to the president's office. There, I saw Catherine Anderson. The beautiful woman I had just seen on TV was there. Beside her was the president of Anderson Corporation, Mr. Kenneth Anderson. Help me out here, John. Our company president was practically begging me. I had no idea what was going on, so I demanded an explanation. And this was the story. Yesterday, as a thank you for helping Catherine Anderson, Mr. Kenneth Anderson and Catherine herself visited our company. They learned about my being fired for being late the day before. Mr. Anderson was furious. Without verifying the truth, he condemned the company's decision to unilaterally fire someone based on an assumption as utterly preposterous. What made this situation so bad for our company was that Anderson Corporation, Mr. Anderson's company, was the partner in the $20 million deal. They are involved in chess-related businesses, while our company develops and sells video games of board games. We were supposed to collaborate with Anderson Corporation to develop a new chess game. That was the deal worth $20 million. Angered by the incident, Mr. Anderson was threatening to call off the deal. That's why the president summoned me. That's the situation, John. We're retracting your termination. Could you please appeal to Mr. Anderson on our behalf? Please, John. Johnson pleaded. His attitude completely changed, and the president's ingratiating tone was frustrating. I felt empty, wondering if this was the company I had aspired to join and worked so hard to be a part of. I'm sorry, but I can't pretend yesterday didn't happen. There's nothing I can do. Please handle it yourselves. Excuse me, I said, and left. A voice called out to me as I walked away. John, I'll thank you properly later, okay? I nodded to her and left the company in silence. And so, I became unemployed. Should I have endured and clung to my job? On my way home, I agonized over the stand I had taken. But at that moment, I had simply had enough. I couldn't keep up with a company like that, not for a lifetime of work. Though the road to re-employment might be tough, I wanted to find a company that I could truly be satisfied with. Then, an unknown number called me. I answered. Hello, this is John. It's Anderson. It was Catherine Anderson. What could she want? Thank you for earlier. I'm sorry for what happened. It's my fault you got fired. Her apology over the phone sounded sincere. I could tell that her apology was not just a formality, it was sincere. No, it's not your fault, Anderson. And it's better I found out early how cold that company is. Actually, I was wondering if you'd be my manager until you find your next job. Manager? It might be overstepping, but since I've removed my mask, I have many fans. I'm short-handed and could really use your help. I don't have any experience as a manager. Do you think I can do it? Yes, I trust you. After you helped me without any benefit to yourself, I believe you are someone I can rely on. Many people try to take advantage of me for my fame, so I need someone trustworthy. And that's how I became Catherine Anderson's manager for a while. It was a relief, considering the difficulty of finding a new job. Having been fired, it would be tough to find re-employment. but having manager for the famous chess player Catherine Anderson on my resume added prestige. Perhaps Catherine saw this and offered me the position, foreseeing its value for my future. I never imagined that my being late that day would lead to becoming the manager for the #1 female chess player. It was something beyond my wildest dreams. Entering a world I had never experienced before was nerve-wracking, but I decided to work hard at my own pace, just as I had always done. "Prioritizing another woman over our wedding is just the worst," she exclaimed. "All I did was help a woman who had fallen, but my wife was furious, not pleased with my actions. Marrying the daughter of the GM, I came to discover her true nature. I'll tell Daddy and have you fired from the company," she threatened. Subsequently, I ended up divorced and jobless, but I have no regrets. Ignoring that fallen woman would have haunted me forever. Then, the woman I saved appeared before me with a meaningful look. "If you seek revenge, I'll help you," she said. Her true identity was a mystery. "My name is Justin, and I'm 27 years old. I work as a salaryman at a distribution company. Actually, right now, I'm experiencing the greatest happiness of my life. I'm marrying Emily, my longtime girlfriend, and we are in the midst of our wedding ceremony. Do you, Justin, take Emily to be your wife and promise to love her?" "Yes, I do." "And do you, Emily, take Justin as your husband and promise to love him?" "Of course, I do." Thus, we shared our vow with a kiss. There erupted a grand chorus of congratulations around us. Truly, I am a fortunate man. I felt so lucky to have married such a beautiful wife. But that thought didn't last long. The ceremony continued, and we stepped out once to change our attire. I had thought a wardrobe change was unnecessary, or maybe just once would be enough. However, at Emily's request, we ended up changing outfits 3 times. In addition, everything from the venue, meals, cake, to the message board, all cost money, and we ended up spending more than double our budget. Thanks to the extravagant arrangements, the attendees seemed to be having a great time, and the atmosphere was lively. But honestly, the expenses pained me. After changing, I waited for Emily for a while, but she didn't show up. With limited time for the ceremony, I became worried and went to look for her. That's when I heard Emily's angry shouts coming from outside the room. "What do you mean by this? I'm terribly sorry. What happened?" "Listen, the dress for the wardrobe change hasn't arrived." "What do you mean it hasn't arrived?" "Actually, the bride had specifically requested this dress, but we were informed a week ago that it would be difficult to deliver it by the wedding day. We tried calling the bride several times but couldn't reach her. We intended to inform her by email. How am I supposed to know that? I really wanted to wear that dress. What are you going to do about it?" "We have prepared an alternative dress. Could you consider wearing that?" "That's a joke, right? I absolutely refuse to wear such a plain dress." "Emily, please, let's just wear this dress for now. We have to consider the timing of the ceremony. Compromise on my once-in-a-lifetime wedding." "No way, bring me a more glamorous dress." "Unfortunately, all the dresses are already booked, and this is the only one available." "What? I can't believe this. This dress is really cute too, Emily. You look good in anything, so just try it on." "Fine, if you give me a hotel stay voucher from here, I'll wear it." "That's a bit much. You can't even do that, despite it being your fault. Look, I'll treat you to a hotel stay another time. Can you wear this dress for now?" "Really? All right, then I'll bear with it." And with that, Emily finally began to change. I apologized to the distressed employee on her behalf. Getting bossed around by Emily like this had happened numerous times. Being the daughter of an elite GM in the same workplace, she was quite pampered and spoiled. The number of times I've been swayed by Emily on dates is countless. Initially, when we started dating, she was kind and only occasionally showed her whimsical side, so I didn't mind it. Her capriciousness worsened after I proposed to her. Perhaps feeling secure about our marriage, Emily started showing her true colors. Her recent behavior had become excessively unreasonable, and this was my only concern. After that, nothing significant happened, and the wedding ceremony concluded smoothly. "Whew, I'm exhausted. Hey, let's head home quickly." "Just wait a minute. I want to at least say goodbye to everyone." "What? You can just send them a message later, right? But they came all this way. It's only polite to say thanks." What a hassle, and it's not my thing. Come on, let's just go home. All right. Yielding to Emily's stubbornness, I reluctantly agreed to leave without saying goodbye. We got into the same car and headed towards our home. In the car, we talked happily about today's ceremony. Weddings are so fun and moving. Today was really something. Well, yeah, we spent a lot of money, so it should at least be entertaining. Today really created some wonderful memories. If only the wardrobe change had gone smoothly, it would have been perfect. That couldn't be helped, and they said they tried to contact you, right? If the message doesn't get through, it's pointless. It's not my fault. Yeah, maybe you're right. I didn't say anything more, knowing that Emily would just get more upset. As we drove along chatting, I spotted someone squatting down outside. I parked a car in front of the park and got out. Wait, where are you going? I'm just worried about that person. They'll be fine. Let's just go home and relax together. But they look in pain. I'll be right back. I couldn't ignore the woman on the park bench, clutching her stomach in apparent pain. I approached her and asked, "Are you okay? My stomach hurts so much." "Your stomach? Can you stand?" The woman nodded weakly. Somehow, she managed to stand up, and I guided her to my car. However, Emily, waiting inside the car, looked visibly upset. "Wait, you're not seriously planning to take care of this woman, are you?" "Well, not take care of her, but I thought I'd take her to the hospital." "No, I don't want another woman in our car." "Then you go ahead home in this car. I'll call an ambulance and take her to the hospital." "That's ridiculous. How can you prioritize another woman on our wedding day?" "Another woman? This is an emergency. What's wrong with helping someone in need? I just can't stand you prioritizing another woman over me on our special day, our wedding day. We can spend plenty of time together when we get home. For now, please help me get her into the car." "Fine, whatever. It seems like you just don't get it." "I'm sorry, Emily. Can you please come with me to help her?" "That's it. We're getting a divorce. I'll tell my father and make sure you lose your job too." "Are you serious? We just got married today." "I'm dead serious. I don't want to be with a man who prioritizes another woman over me, even if it's to help her." "You hate it even if it's helping someone?" "Yes, I hate it, and I'm done talking to you. Goodbye." With that, Emily got into the car alone and drove away. I was shaken by Emily's selfish behavior, but I quickly composed myself and called an ambulance. A few minutes later, the ambulance arrived, and I accompanied the woman to the hospital. Later, I was informed about the woman's condition and safety. There's nothing life-threatening, but right now she seems to be in severe stomach pain, making it difficult for her to talk. I left the hospital, feeling a bit worried. But then, I remembered a problem. I had nowhere to return to. To be exact, it was just hard for me to return home. You see, the house was provided by my in-laws, who are very fond of Emily. It just felt awkward to go back there. So, with no other choice, I stayed in a hotel that night and planned to go straight to the office the next day. I never thought I would end up alone in a hotel, feeling empty on the night of my wedding. Holding on to these sad thoughts, I fell asleep. The next day, I went to work as usual. When I arrived at the office, I noticed it was unusually noisy. Before I could ask what was going on, Carter, the GM, appeared in front of me. "Justin, what on earth are you doing here?" "What do you mean?" "I came to work, of course." "You have the nerve to show up at work after making such a blunder." "What do you mean?" Carter thrust a disciplinary report at me. It alleged a work mistake I didn't recall making. "What's this? I don't remember making such a mistake." "So, you're not only making mistakes, but now you're lying about it." "No, I'm telling you, I don't recall making this kind of mistake at all." "Do you have any idea how difficult it was to clean up after this?" "It's all your fault, you know. But I'm telling you, still trying to deny it." "Fine, you don't need to come to the office anymore." "You mean I shouldn't come in? Do I need to spell it out?" "I'm saying you are fired." "Fired? Why? You make a mistake this big and show no remorse. Isn't it obvious?" "That can't be. Besides, you did something terrible to Emily, didn't you?" "Something terrible? On the way back from your wedding, you were seen seducing another woman, right in front of my daughter." "I didn't do such a thing. I was just helping someone in trouble." "That sounds like an excuse. Emily came crying to me last night." "It's not an excuse, it's the truth." I can't believe a word of such a liar. I don't even want to see your face anymore. Can you please just leave? I understood. I gathered my belongings and left the office. And so, I ended up losing both my home and my job. Feeling lost, I decided to go back to my parents' place for the time being. They listened to my situation and comforted me. To avoid being a burden to them, I started looking for a new job right away. But all I got were rejection emails, and I couldn't find a company that would accept me. Finally, I managed to get an interview with one company. I practiced as much as I could and gave it my all. Honestly, I didn't feel very confident, but all I could do was hope for the best. On my way home after the interview, a familiar woman approached me. "Excuse me, aren't you the person who helped me the other day?" "Oh, you're the woman from before." It was Julia, the woman I had helped previously. She seemed to be in good spirits now. "Were you okay after that?" "Yes, actually, it turned out to be appendicitis. I've had surgery and I'm feeling much better now." "That's great to hear. Thank you so much for your help that day. And I'm sorry." "Why are you apologizing?" "I vaguely remember from that time. It seemed like you were having trouble with a woman." "No, Julia, it wasn't your fault. That day was after my wedding, and my wife was in a bad mood." "Your wedding? Oh no, I'm so sorry for ruining such an important day for you." "Please don't worry about it. The fault lies with me for not understanding my wife's true character before marrying her." "Is that so?" "Actually, my wife really didn't like that I helped you, Julia. She talked about divorce. And to top it off, my former boss is her father, and my father-in-law fired me, leading to my current situation." "Really? All that happened?" "Yes, but I don't regret helping you at all. In fact, I'm glad I did." "Justin, do you want to get back at your wife and father-in-law?" "Huh?" I was taken aback by her sudden question, not immediately grasping its meaning. "If it's revenge, I can help you." "What do you mean?" "You'll understand in time. Anyway, I would really like to properly thank you. Can we exchange contact information?" "Sure, but please, you don't have to worry about it." Although I didn't understand the intent behind Julia's mysterious offer, we exchanged contact details and parted ways. The next day, I got an unexpected message from Julia. She asked me to come to a location marked on a map immediately. Wondering what had happened, I quickly got ready and left the house. The place marked on the map was some food company. The company was Oakwood Corporation, a well-known major player in the industry. When I got to the company, Julia was there to greet me. "Sorry for calling you out of the blue. Please come this way." I followed Julia as she instructed. She led me to a room, which turned out to be the president's office. Inside, a man in an expensive-looking suit was sitting, waiting. "Hello, thank you for coming all the way here." "No problem. Is there something wrong?" "I guess I didn't explain anything yet. This is my father, the CEO and president of Oakwood Corporation." "The president? So, you are the president's daughter?" "Well, yes, that's one way to put it. The reason I asked you to come here is that I have a proposal for you." "A proposal?" "My daughter asked me to invite you to join our company as an employee." "Me, at Oakwood Corporation? But why?" "It's a way to thank you for helping me. I thought it was very unfortunate that someone as kind-hearted as you was treated that way." "Let me thank you as well. Thank you for helping my daughter. I didn't do anything special. I heard about your situation from my daughter. We would be very pleased to have someone as sincere as you. But I didn't help her expecting anything in return." "You're very humble, Justin. Do you already have an offer from another company?" "No, I'm embarrassed to say I don't yet." "How about it, then? You used to work for a distribution company, right?" "Yes, a distribution company. You might be able to make a contribution in our company as well. I haven't done much significant work, but can I still be of help?" "Of course, it depends on your effort, but I believe you can do it." "If that's the case, I'd be honored to work at your company." "Great, we'd be happy to have you." "Thank you, Julia." "It's okay. Remember I said I'd help you with revenge." What did you mean by that?" "I think you'll understand soon if you work at our company." Although I still didn't fully grasp Julia's words, I was now set to start working at the new company. My parents were thrilled when I told them about it. Using the connections and knowledge I gained at the distribution company, I started negotiating to get Oakwood Corporation's products distributed in various places. "Justin, did you secure another contract?" "Yes, They heard my explanation and wanted to stock our products. And their acquaintance, who runs another store, is also interested in our goods. I'm visiting their store tomorrow. Amazing. How many stores is this now this month? I think it's the 5th one. Your good nature must have played a big part in this success. Thank you. That's an honor to hear. I contributed more to the company's sales and quickly rose through the ranks, becoming a GM. Becoming a GM increased my interactions with President Oakwood Corporation and Julia even more. Julia and I even started going out for meals together privately. Congratulations on your promotion. Thank you. I never imagined you'd climb up to department head so quickly. Impressive. I haven't done anything special, but my ability to contribute like this is thanks to you. I just scouted you. The results are all due to your effort. Thank you. So, there's something about work I wanted to discuss. We're planning to establish our own distribution network, and I want you to handle negotiations with a particular company along with me. Negotiations? Which company? It's a company you know very well. Julia smiled mysteriously. She discreetly told me the name of the company, and I was shocked. It was the company I used to work for. There, President Anderson, Carter, and Emily were present. The negotiations seemed very important to them, and they looked tense. However, when I entered the room, Carter and Emily's faces turned visibly pale. The negotiation went smoothly, and Carter and Emily seemed relieved and confident. What do you think? We would like to sign a contract with your company. The proposal is interesting. What do you think, Justin? Yes, I found the content quite intriguing. So, shall we sign? Well, contracting with their company is undoubtedly a good decision. Indeed. We would very much like to sign a contract. Really? Yes. However, there is a condition. We would like to sign a contract only if the GM and that lady are fired from your company. What? What do you mean by that? Calm down. Julia, what exactly do you mean by that? Don't you know the circumstances under which Justin came to work at our company? Well, I thought I heard from Carter that Justin left for career advancement. Ah, such a convenient story he told. That's a blatant lie. What? Justin, please explain the real circumstances. As Julia passed the conversation to me, Carter and Emily seemed to be pleading with their eyes. It seemed like they were hoping that I would help them in some way. Of course, I had no intention of helping them and honestly told the truth. I was harassed by Carter and Emily. It all started when I helped Julia, who was suffering from a stomachache right after my wedding. Despite helping someone, I was verbally abused by them and was falsely accused of a work mistake I did not commit, leading to my dismissal by Carter. What? Carter? Is this true? That's not true. Justin is lying. I was angry because he made a mistake at work and tried to cover it up. That mistake was all made by Emily in the past. It's all recorded in the message history. Every day she made mistakes at work and said, "Dad will take care of it," in her conversations. Besides, if Justin had really made a work mistake, why would there be a need to lie about him leaving for career advancement? Indeed. Carter, their statements seem very reasonable. What do you have to say? Dad, do something. Cornered by everyone's accusations, Carter could no longer make excuses and finally confessed the truth. Yes, it's all a big lie. All the work mistakes were made by Emily. What? You two have done something outrageous. But it wasn't on purpose. Please, can you spare us from being fired? Come on, Emily. Apologize. Please, I'm begging you. Even if Julia hadn't done that, we can't keep such problematic employees. You two are fired as of today. But how could this? Dad, what are we going to do now? With all due respect, you're old enough to stop relying on your father. You'll regret this. With that, we successfully concluded the negotiation. In the end, Carter and Emily were fired, and we finalized the contract. Having always felt wronged, this turn of events was quite satisfying. Later, Carter and Emily became notorious in the food industry as troublemakers and struggled to find new employment. As a result, both Carter and Emily ended up lost, without any clear direction for their future. Meanwhile, Oakwood Corporation's performance continued to improve. Lately, the company's sales have been very good. It's all thanks to you, Justin. Not at all. It's thanks to you, Julia. And thank you for what you did during the negotiation. That time. Oh, You mean during the negotiation? I didn't really do anything. I never imagined revenge could take such a form. I told you, if it's revenge, I'll help. Did you foresee this happening? Well, I did have my father's involvement in the revenge. The condition we set was approved by him. Really? Of course, I don't have that much power on my own. Besides, my father was quite keen on the idea. He was. About revenge. Yes, he was very angry when he heard about your situation. I see. I should thank him as well. I heard a rumor that you were planning to move. Yes, I've been living with my parents since leaving my previous company. I don't want to burden them forever. So you're restarting living alone? Yes, but it's hard to find a good place. This area is a bit away from residential districts, so considering transportation, it can be difficult. Given it's a business district, the rent can be quite expensive. In that case, the apartment next to mine is available. It's in an area where our company offers a rent subsidy, and it's conveniently close to the station. Would you like to come and see it? Really? That sounds like a great place. Can I come and take a look? Please do. I'll speak to the real estate agent for you. So, I began preparing to move. The apartment Julia recommended was beautiful, with a great view and seemed very comfortable to live in. I decided to move there, and by the next month, I had successfully completed the move. After settling in, I decided to go out. And coincidentally, Julia was also leaving her apartment. Good morning. Good morning. I almost forgot we're neighbors now. It does feel a bit like we're living together, doesn't it? Kind of, yes. Are you going somewhere? Just going to buy some groceries. How about you? I was just going to take a walk. If you'd like, why not join me for lunch at my place? I couldn't impose. It's no trouble, really. Well, in that case, thank you. We chopped together and cooked a meal, enjoying lunch. This is delicious, Julia. You're a great cook. Thank you. Feel free to come over for a meal again. Next time, let me cook for you. I'm not sure if it'll be to your taste, though. I'm looking forward to it. Having lunch together like this on our day off, it's almost like we're living together. Living together? I mean, like roommates. Sorry, I misspoke. No, I was thinking the same, like cohabitation. We both felt embarrassed at the word cohabitation. I couldn't help but imagine living together with Julia. It seemed like it would be wonderful. I was actually thinking it might be nice to live with you, but it seemed weird to ask, so I suggested this apartment. Why did you recommend it to me? Because I like you, Justin. You like me. Yes, but you probably don't feel the same, so forget I said anything. That's not true. I like you too, Julia. Really? Yes, but I thought I wasn't good enough for you, being the daughter of a president and my benefactor. I don't care about that. I was drawn to your sincerity and kindness, and I was attracted to your caring and reliable nature. Would you go out with me? Yes, I'd love to. And so, Julia and I started dating. We later got married, and I eventually rose to become the next president of the company. We're expecting a child soon and are living happily as a family.